Thank you for visiting Bailee Bob's Boneyard, where we're all about barkers, blood, books, boxes, and burps. Today I'm going to be reviewing a 2019 horror film called The Lodge. It was co-directed by Sveen and Veronica Franz. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. And it was starring Bailee. She's also the granddaughter of Elvis Presley, so that's pretty cool. So I really loved The Lodge. I saw it in theaters, and I was actually planning on going to see it again because I loved it that much, but then theaters closed down because of the pandemic. But this is one of my all-time favorite horror movies now. I think it's so good, so well done, so creepy, and I highly recommend everybody go see it if you're a horror fan. If things creep you out too much, maybe not, because it is pretty creepy, but it is so good. I love it so much. The Lodge is about a woman who is about to get married to a man with 2 kids, so she's about to become their stepmom. And for Christmas, the 4 of them go to a lodge out in the middle of nowhere, and it's very snowy because it's in December. And the dad leaves because he has work, so he leaves his soon-to-be wife alone with these 2 kids that don't like her. They see her as evil stepmom. And throughout the movie, it's them being secluded in this lodge together, and things go awry, I guess you could say. Things don't really work out the way that this girl was hoping that they would. And shit goes down. So now I'm going to be going into the details of the movie, different horror elements and cool things that happen throughout it. So from this point out, if you are planning on watching the movie, which you should, then turn this off and go watch it. If you're not planning on watching it, then continue to listen to what I have to say. So at the beginning of the movie, one of the bloody parts that happens right off the bat, this happens within, I want to say, the first 5 minutes of the movie. The original mother of the children, she and the dad are going through a divorce so that he can marry Grace, the lead, played by Bailee. So I guess she doesn't handle it very well, because she goes to the kitchen, she has a glass of wine, she takes a sip, and then she pulls out her gun and shoots herself in the head. And it's very quick, very fast. Nothing is really said as she's doing this, and blood spurts to the white wall behind her so you can see it. She's like that dead. It was kind of a shock. You don't expect that to happen at all because she's sitting there drinking wine. And when she grabs the gun, it's super fast, so it's totally out of the blue. Another horrific part of the movie is they show dead bodies. How many was it? 39 dead bodies, I believe, laying on long tables with tape over their mouth that says sin. And this is based off of a real cult religion that had to do with thinking that when they die, extraterrestrial aliens in their spaceship are gonna come take them away to their alien planet. But anyway, so that's what it's based on, a real life mass suicide that had to do with this crazy cult. And it showed a clip of the survivor looking at all these dead bodies. And it's not a bloody scene, they're all just dead. I don't know how they killed themselves. So it didn't look like they shot themselves or anything like that, because they were just dead, cold bodies. There was no blood whatsoever. One little tiny blood thing that happens is not that big of a deal, is that Grace, the new stepmom, she has chronic nosebleeds. So whenever she's either happy or laughing or freaked out or anything, she'll start getting nosebleeds. And it's creepy, but it's not, really scary, because everyone gets nosebleeds. I've never had a nosebleed, so I don't know why I'm lying. But, people get nosebleeds, so that wasn't really a scary part, but it was a fun little detail that they added. Another thing that happens to Grace is when she's out ice skating, because it's super snowy and icy outside of the lodge, is that the ice cracks and she falls through. So if you have a fear of water or a fear of drowning, that one's pretty scary. They have to pull her out, and then she's, freezing cold. So it's a combination of, like, she could have died from freezing to death or from drowning. So again, that was no blood, but it was still a fun little event. So throughout their time being in the lodge together, her and the kids without the dad, she starts to feel like she's going crazy, and I'm not gonna say exactly what happens, I don't think, because this is such a good movie. This is like such a good movie that I feel like it would just be a sin to spoil it and to tell you guys what happens, because I'm so passionate about it and I love it so much. I think I'm gonna withhold some details to force you guys to go watch it. It's on Hulu. Please go watch it. So anyway, she starts to think that she's going crazy. She has PTSD because she was in that cult. She was the lone survivor. And she has, visions and nightmares of her time being there. They have a gun in the house for safety, and at one point she's sleepwalking through the house with the gun, and the kids are trying to wake her up. And when she wakes up, she turns around and she smacks the little girl with the gun and cuts her head, and she's bleeding. And that's a part where you start to question if the stepmom is a bad guy, if she's actually crazy, what's up with all this. Another thing that happens is you see the boy, the son. He is hanging with a noose around his neck, and he lifts his head up and he's like, look, we can't die. And it appears that he's just swinging on this thing that's tied to the roof. And that's another part of her being like, oh my God, I'm going crazy. How is that possible? And so she thinks that they're dead. She thinks that they're all dead and that they died, and that's why the dad hasn't come back. Here's a really sad one, and it sucks. Unfortunately, the dog dies, and the dog dies by being frozen to death. The dog runs outside and doesn't come back, and they can't find him. And eventually later on, she finally finds him and she picks him up, and he's completely frozen to death, and it's really sad. Towards the end of the movie, one thing that Grace does that's pretty morbid is she has the fire going in the fireplace with the logs, and she takes the log out and she kneels on it so that she burns her legs, and you hear her screaming and torturing herself, and the kids run away. They go upstairs, they lock themselves in the room, and you hear her continuing to scream, so you know that she's torturing herself. And then later she comes up to the room, and we see her and we see her face, and her face is severely burned too, so we know that she took the log and shoved it on her face and burnt her face. Then the father comes home eventually, and she has the gun, and she's like, look, we can't die, we're already dead, it's not a big deal. So she goes to shoot herself, and it doesn't work, and they all gasp. They're like, oh. She's like, see, I told you, we're already dead, we can't die. And then he's still freaking out, so she's like, you're not listening to me, look. And then she turns it on him and does the same thing, but this time it actually does go off and shoots him in the head. He falls back down falls down the stairs and hits his head, and there's blood on the floor and on the walls. Kids are obviously crying, freaking out, and they try to run away, and they go to his car, which gets stuck in the snow, so they're stuck with her. And then at the very end, she brings the man's bloody corpse to the dinner table, sits him up while they're, eating with their dead dad sitting there with his head blown out, and she's singing a song, and then at the very end, we see her put tape over her mouth and over the kid's mouth that says sin, in reference to her past and the cult that she was in. So it is her insanity of her PTSD finally catching up with her. And then the very end shot is of the gun. So it's inferred that she's probably going to kill the children and then kill herself. The main horror element of this movie was 100% psychological. It wasn't blood and guts. There was very minimal blood. There weren't monsters or paranormal things. It was completely psychological, which I love. It makes it more so that you can put yourself in their shoes and really think Like, if you were in that situation, how creepy that would be. On my blood scale, I give this 1.5 pints of blood out of 5 because there was blood, there was shooting, but that was about it. There was 2 gunshots. There was the mom at the beginning and the guy at the end. And sometimes she had nosebleeds and her burning her face, but overall, it really wasn't a bloody movie. It was very much about psychological scares and creepiness. So leave me a comment, let me know what you thought about The Lodge, if you loved it as much as I did. I know that a lot of people actually really hated the ending and they said that it fell flat, which no it didn't. First of all, you're wrong. It was an amazing ending. I felt like it gave me foreign horror film vibes. And I love that. Foreign horror films are usually so much creepier and weirder, and I love that. Let me know if you agree with me or if you disagree with me, if you're one of those weirdos that thinks it fell flat, or if you think that it's one of the best freaking horror movies ever. If you want to leave a comment for a suggestion for another horror film that I could review, I would really love and appreciate that as well. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for visiting Bailee Bob's Boneyard. See you next time. Thingy-majiggy in the gun. I don't know what it's called. Or should I know that?